Welcome to Plan D Gallery. I'm Edwina Dedlow, and this is my husband, David Dedlow.
I'm the artist, and she's the gallerist. We're a semi-retired team of two.
Ready to come in?
Come on, let me show you my work. As you can see, a lot of it is very pointy, so you have to walk through carefully. Everything has some element that's held in place by physical forces, tension, friction, compression, as opposed to being something that is formed and is stable. So some of these things, you could take a string and cut it with a pair of scissors and the whole piece would fall apart. Part of this is a practical reality because as I make these pieces, some of them, as you can see, like this one, are large enough that we've run out of room in my studio, which is actually the other use of this gallery is as a studio. So this is my studio. In fact, I'll take you back so you can see where the dirty part of my work begins. So this is where we stuff everything that I usually have out on the floor when I'm working on a piece. And this is my workshop where all the dust is supposed to stay, which doesn't happen very often. But you can see that it's not very practical when we have a show up on the gallery. Normally I'm working in this space, but now it's set up as the Plan D Gallery. So it's really Plan D Gallery and studio. So this is a perfect example of the work being put together by tension. You can see it's actually even slightly mobile. Everything is there's no glue and very few fasteners. When I'm making the work, it frequently, I have to take it apart and put it back together, especially because most of my work is polychrome, which is to say it's colored. So I don't paint anything after the fact. It's constructed out of components, which is why I don't really call myself a sculptor. I call myself a constructivist. I also like the fact that that is a reference to the art movement from the early and middle 20th century in Russia especially. So I think of myself as a constructivist. These small pieces are just maquettes. I hope at some point to get a commission for a large outdoor piece. So some of these are designed to be done at a scale much, much larger. This is a piece that is wall hung as opposed to freestanding. And I named it Mondrian, not because I decided beforehand that it was going to be made with primary colors, but after the fact, it occurred to me that it had some of those characteristics. Again, you can see that there's the possibility of movement because things are held together with tension. This is a more complicated piece that actually is another good example of, it's very stable if you don't touch it, but they can be a little bit fragile. Taking you around to this side. This is a piece that I wanted to do for hanging. So this is neither a stable nor a mobile, it's just sort of a hanging piece. This is my most recent work, which uses natural material along with the same elements of balance and weight. So if this was to be taken off, the whole piece changes because it's in balance. This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about because when I put this piece out here at first, I was looking down at the ground and I ran right into it and all the components flew apart. But because they're individual components, nothing was damaged and I put it back together. That also has the great advantage that I have to take all the pieces apart when they're not on display and store them someplace. So if I had 100,000 square feet of exhibition space, I'd probably be able to take it up pretty quickly. The individual pieces are, I try to explore different presentations. So this one is, extremely symmetrical, and yet it still has some of these balance elements. Like this piece comes right off. Here you get an idea of how I use color in all of my work, but it also suggests why I have to have them demountable, because I put together the formal aspects, but I work on the color after the fact. So I have to take all the parts apart and put them back together, look at it again, take it apart, put it back together. Like most artists, my work is iterative, which is I don't design it in advance and just execute it. It builds itself during the process of making it. Especially important in my work because the natural forces often create the shapes. These are not shapes that I predetermined. I include a shape in a piece and I might put tension on it and it becomes a bowed shape rather than a straight line. And those shapes are just determined by the natural forces that are working on the piece. That's why I like to think of my work as, well, it's highly engineered. There's something about it that still has an organic quality, at least I hope for the viewer, because that's the way I feel about it. So the tension between it being an engineered, constructed object and having some relationship to the natural world, I hope comes about because I'm using natural forces to make the shapes. It's kind of drawing in space, but each time I put something on that drawing, it changes the piece in such a way that I might have to rearrange things. And I go back and forth until it sort of all falls into place and it becomes the final piece. My materials are often semi-found objects. I had a manufacturing business for 37 years here in Frogtown, and it included the ability to manufacture in metal, wood, plastic, and glass. So I had all those media available to me. Now I was using them in the manufacturing of the picture frames we made for, like I say, for quite a few decades. And there's a lot of leftover materials. So I use what's on hand, and I suppose at some point I'm going to run out of material. I might have to buy something. But I closed my business 3 years ago and created this space for my gallery and my studio, and have been working semi-full-time as an art maker since that time.